Welcome to the AIPC interviews, where I talk to members of the Artful Eye photography community, among others, about them. It is March 19th, 2020, and on this episode, my guest is a photographer from Chicago who's been featured on CNN.com, among other places, Angie Garbot. Hello, Angie.
Hi, Greg. How you doing?
Not too bad. How's things in Chicago?
A little rainy today, and we're having a little bit of what I think is early spring weather.
Chicago is pretty famous for its rain, though, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, this time of year for sure.
Yeah.
My tulips are already coming up in the front yard, so hopefully
wow.
we don't get another cold snap. I don't want to lose them.
I still have snow in my front yard.
Oh, hopefully we're beyond snow. Although, we usually get one more snowfall between now and like mid-April.
Yeah. Well, the way my house is situated, though, the sun is well behind the house. So, the backyard's getting a little better for getting rid of the snow, but the front yard, there's still a lot of shade there, so it's taken a long time for it to go away. But we haven't had much warm weather either. It's still been fairly cold. So, but I'm sure it'll come. Yeah. So, so we were talking pre-show about a few things, and I mentioned in the intro there that you were featured on CNN.com. Can you enlighten us a little bit on that one?
Sure. CNN was kind of a fun one. So I had photographed a wedding, and it was round about 2013-ish, and iPhones and smartphones were not quite as prevalent as they are now. And at one point, all of the bridesmaids had their cameras out, their phones out, and they were pointing them at the bride and taking a picture of her. And when I shoot weddings and events and things like that, I'm very cognizant of the fact that other people have their phones. They want to capture the memories. They want to have a little fun. So I don't like to compete with that, and they don't want to fight with it. So I will usually say, hey, let me get my photo, and then you guys, go ahead, take the phones out, take your photos, do what you want. And while they were taking a photo of her, I snapped a picture of all of them photographing her. That caught the eye of someone over at CNN, and that's how I got the interview.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so aside from CNN, like I was looking on your website, so I was reading a few things. One thing I saw was a bit of a reality TV show that you've done.
Yeah, it was a reality TV show, a Real Wedding Chicago, and it followed a couple from their engagement through the whole wedding planning process. So how they chose their vendors, what vendors they chose, the decision-making process, what they went through to make their decisions, all the way through to their wedding day. And it was a lot of fun. It was also a little bit of nerve-wracking because as a photographer, I'm used to being behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not used to being the focus of videography. And so for the first couple hours of the wedding day, it was a little awkward and a little bit, I guess I was a little shy while I was photographing, because I was very conscious, right? So I was very conscious to make sure that I, was holding the camera right.
Yeah.
And doing the things that as a professional photographer, using air quotes, I should be doing.
Yeah. And I mean, I know what you mean, because you're not used to having, it's almost like they're breathing down your neck when they're recording you doing what you do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, it wasn't just documentary. So they were doing some fun shots where they were coming in close to the camera. They were, and I was sort of like, oh wait, you're my space.
Yeah, that's right.
You're in my
bubble.
space. I need to be able to. Yeah, I need to be able to get my elbows out. I mean, I've got gear on here. I need a little.
Yeah, use a long lens. Get over there.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But honestly, after the first hour and a half, 2 hours or so, I really forgot that they were there. I got, as is always the case on a wedding day, especially, I got all consumed with what was happening in front of me and what's happening in the day. And it dawned on me later that, the reality show folks, I do believe that after a certain point in time, they just forget that camera's there, and they do weird things and stupid things because they forget the camera's there, even though it's there. Yeah. But it's very easy to get comfortable, once you're in that space for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, you were there for a job. You had a task at hand, and
Yeah.
I guess, once you got lost in that, it would be pretty easy to kind of just forget about them anyway. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. And
yeah,
it was a great show. Yeah. And the other vendors I got to work with were really phenomenal. And we all worked really, really well together. And it was really one of the most fun days I've had really, even to this day. It was a blast.
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So I usually start these interviews off by asking, how did you get into iPhone photography? And this is going to lead into the other. There was three things I wanted to talk to you about, and those were the first two. But I also wanted
Okay.
to talk about the smug mug thing. But I think we'll get into that probably by asking how
Yeah.
you got into iPhone photography.
Yeah. So iPhone photography, very interesting. I have been doing it really since the second, maybe the iPhone 2 or 3. And the way I've never been an early adopter of new technology. And this is kind of a quirky way that I got my first iPhone. I actually I had a snowmobile accident and I
Oh,
broke my right wrist.
ooh,
And yeah, and I was in a cast for a long time, and I was laid up for a long time. I couldn't use my camera, but also I couldn't use my phone because I had an old flip phone, and I couldn't press the buttons. My right arm was really that incapacitated. So um, someone suggested that I look at an iPhone because I could just tap the screen with my finger, with my index finger.
yeah,
That's how I actually got my first iPhone. It was sort of a way to have something that I could use as a phone and texting, where I could just simply tap. And from there, as a photographer, I was really excited to kind of try a new camera, like a new thing out, right? Like, what is this phone with a camera in it? It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah,
And yeah, and while I was recouping from the accident and also kind of getting back into taking photos, I felt like I needed a little bit of creative inspiration. So I did a 365 project for myself, just using the iPhone. So every day I took a picture and edited it solely on the iPhone, and that's where I really started getting into using different apps. And I edited the photos way more than I would ever edit anything
oh,
for a client,
yeah,
right? You know how you get into that, and that's where, and it took off for me. I fell in love with it. As something that's very separate from my business and my professional photography. It's really a great outlet, and I still love it.
yeah. Because that almost echoes my 365. Well, it was a 366 for me because the first time I ever did it was on a leap year, and
Like this year.
that was the same thing. It was exploring a number of different apps and all this stuff. But I did it that way too. Shoot the photo, edit it, and post it all in the same day. And I did
Yes.
that for
Yep.
a whole
Hmm.
year. And there was times when it
Yep.
was so grueling, but I trotted on
There
and
were
I
a
got
few.
through it.
Yeah, there were a few times when I'd get into bed and go, I didn't do
I
my
know,
picture
right?
today.
Like I don't know how many times at 11:59 I was posting a photo.
Got to jump up and wander around the house and see what kind of light I can find and what can I make interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then you got into somehow you got to do a webinar on SmugMug.
I did. So after I kind of got into the 365 project, led to a couple of really interesting things that I never would have expected. A lot of what I did, especially early on, was a lot of abstract work. I love even before the iPhone. I love travel photography. I love architecture. I love shooting buildings and things like that when I travel. And so I would hop on the train and throw the phone in my pocket and go downtown and just sort of take all kinds of funky photographs, just wander around and take interesting pictures. And those were the kind of things I was posting. And I started to get some interest from interior designers and some local galleries and things about the abstract work. So
Hmm.
I started working with a lot of interior decorators. They would go through my work. We would look at a wall in a room, and I printed some things on like wood blocks. I printed canvases, all from my iPhone work, and that was also a lot of fun. Something I never expected that would kind of happen from that. And it got me thinking that, well, at the time I was also teaching at the Chicago Photography Center, and we were teaching, SLRs. We were still teaching film at the time.
Oh yeah.
And, but a lot of people were coming in with their phones, and it really became apparent that there were a lot of people who really just didn't know a lot about photography, let alone how to take a good photo on a smartphone.
Right.
And I started teaching. So I started teaching a workshop on how to take a better picture with your phone. Because as many people as there are and are who would love to learn how to use what I call a fancy DSLR, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people they don't really have the time or the inclination to learn about things like shutter speed and f-stop and all that kind of stuff. But there are lots of photography concepts that translate to the phone, that people can learn to take their kind of, what I like to say, their photos from a snapshot level to something maybe they want to hang on their wall.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah. And so that's how I started teaching. And Smug Mug is still to this day one of my providers. I use them for they're one of my gallery providers for my business and corporate work that I do. And they approached me and said, "Hey, I see you're doing this. How about we do a webinar on it?" And I said, "Yeah, great." So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier too, like in the pre-show, these things got you a lot of exposure because you are in business for yourself, and I mean, the
Yes.
more exposure you get, the better.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been very lucky, I feel like, to the exposure has been wonderful, and but through the exposure and I've got to meet some really wonderful people in the photography community, who have become mentors, who have become colleagues, who are friends. And I really feel like the photography community, is when you find your niche or you find your tribe. I know it's a really wonderful place to be. It's a very supportive place to be. It's a very friendly place to be when you find the right people. And I feel like you never know what direction it's going to go.
Yeah, that's right. I could say the same with my experience with when I was on Facebook. I was in the Tiny Shutter Facebook group. Just a fantastic bunch of people there. Same with the AIPC. And most recently, I've discovered Mobitog. I think it's mobitog.com. It's another community of mobile photographers, and it's wide open. It's Android. It's iPhone, and I mean, but the people are fantastic. It's just you just can't beat them when it comes to like-minded people. It's a lot of fun.
It really is. And one of the things that happened to me very early on in that 365 project I talked about, Instagram came in there, very early. And I was one of the first very early people to use Instagram. And when it first started, hashtags weren't quite a thing yet, but they were kind of a thing. But most of the hashtags were things like location, so people could find other people in Chicago who were also posting.
Yes.
And all of the sudden, this IG or Chicago group became this wonderful family of people who we all followed each other. We never met in person. We all followed each other. We all commented on each other's photos. We did all sorts of things like that. And then we started having photo walks, and this virtual thing became became really a wonderful way to meet people in real life and connect with people. And it was great.
Yeah. There's nothing like going out and shooting with someone.
It's really a different thing.
Yeah. So speaking of shooting, what apps do you like to shoot with? Like, do you have any specific camera apps that you use, or are you a native camera shooter? Or?
Yeah. So I really do like to shoot with a native camera. And part of the reason for that is, and it was a habit. Early on, the apps, you could take photos through the apps, but then the apps sort of held onto the photos for a little bit, and they didn't always wind up in your camera roll if you didn't export it or save it properly. Remember those days?
Yeah, a lot of bugs.
And and I think it was just new, right? I don't think people really just understood where this was going to go. And And I really wanted to make, and I early on I decided I want these things I want to know where they are. I want them to be in my camera roll. I want to be able to find them again. And so I really my workflow really became shooting through the native camera, and then for a long time I used I used a lot of different apps over time.
Mm-hmm.
Camera Plus was one I used way back when, and SmugMug had an app for a while, and now I really almost exclusively use Snapseed.
Oh yeah. That
Yeah,
seems to
and
be a favorite amongst a lot of people.
and well, I think part of it for me is I can pretty much do anything I want to do to the image, no matter how wacky or normal or easy, all within one app. I don't have to go to a bunch of different apps,
Yeah.
and so it's streamlined it.
Yeah, it is very feature filled, but at the same time, it's speedy. Like it's a quick app. It's
It
not one of
really
these
is.
apps that bogs you down.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like one of the recent enhancements when they added the looks feature, where there's across the bottom they've got, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 different looks that you can choose right off the bat,
Yeah.
that kind of either pop it, or if it's a person, it smooth it or whatever. And they're great starting points if you don't quite know like how to manipulate all the different sections in the app. But I've started using those really as a starting point, and then I go in and I do my own little tweaks to it from there. But
Yeah.
and when
Yeah.
I teach, it's a really that's the one app that I will teach people to use. And the looks have made it a little bit easier for me to teach, because I can go down, we can start there, and then we can understand like what's actually happening in them. It's it's one of those apps where I think until you learn how to use it, it can be a little overwhelming. But then once you figure out that it's really just the same thing, in each section, it's much easier to manipulate.
So, as someone who used to use film, would
Mm-hmm.
you have you seen Filmic Pro's First Light?
I have not.
Oh, give it a look.
I
It
will.
it they've when they designed that app, and it's only been out. I think it was maybe before Christmas it came out, but you've obviously heard of Filmic Pro,
Yes.
the
Yes. Mm-hmm.
the video app. Well, now it's the
Yeah.
same guys. They've done this camera app, and you can, even before you snap the shutter, you can give your images looks.
Oh,
They call them looks. They don't call them filters. They call them looks. And
right.
if you go to the website and read up on it, it shows you the different like films that they've kind of drawn these looks from, and they kind of intermix them a little bit, and it's very, very cool and very fun to play with.
I've written it down. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, give it a look. It's a really cool app. At first they went subscription, and then I think they've changed from subscription to just buying it. And once you buy it, you
Okay.
have it.
Yeah.
Now there
Yeah.
was a free version, but I don't know if there is still or not. Because
Yeah.
whenever I buy an app, I go to the app store. It just shows the open
Yes.
sign or the download sign if I don't have it installed.
Right.
So I can't
Right.
tell what these things are anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know.
give
Yeah.
it a look. I think you might like it.
I will.
I'm not trying to veer you away from anything that you normally use, but it
Yeah.
might be something that you could always add to your toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I was going to say the other app that I do use frequently still is Hipstamatic.
Oh yeah.
I love to shoot food. I've shot food for various Hillshire brands and those kind of things. So I've shot food photography like that, and I've always kind of been a little frustrated sometimes with the way you can shooting food can be tricky on a phone. But Hipstamatic has this wonderful film pack by the food photographer David Loftus.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lens and film and flash specifically created by him to mimic his style of food photography. And so I love it. I use that one. If you were to go to my Instagram feed, my personal Instagram feed, and look at my food photos, most of those are taken with that particular app. And there's no editing required. It's just you shoot it and it looks the way it looks. So it's a lot of fun. I like playing around with that one.
So Hipstamatic. Oh yeah, I was going to ask you, what device are you using? What are you shooting with? Which phone?
So right now, I'm on the iPhone 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm not an early adopter. I'll be honest. Um, Really, I just went to the 7 recently because my SE died. I'm a big believer in. It's not so much that you've got, what you've got in your hand. It's how, if you whether or not you know how to use it, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So are you thinking you may upgrade later this year when the 12 or whatever
I
it
don't
is comes
know.
out?
I don't know. Honestly, I'm not. I don't like to jump on stuff really too early. I like to sit back and wait and let everybody else work out the kinks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm on the 10s Max, and
Hmm.
I was on the
Do you
8
love it?
Plus before, and oh yeah,
Hmm.
the jump to the 11 wasn't big enough for me to make that jump. Um,
Hmm.
there's some differences, but the 11 really shines in video, but it
Yeah.
also has the deep fusion feature, which really brings out the texture and things like clothing and things like that.
Yeah.
But I still see some really nice shots. Like okay, so on Thursdays on the AIPC website, it's Throwback Thursday. So I always get people to show images from the past of whatever theme I give it. And
Yeah.
some of these older pictures are still like fantastic. I mean, uh,
Yep.
you'd never know they were taken with like an iPhone 5S or whatever, So, um,
Exactly.
like I
Yeah. I
put
had
one
got
on there
some.
today from my 4S, and I'm still amazed at what that phone could do in its day. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's definitely a combination of the device and knowing how to use it to its full potential,
yeah.
right? And so much of that does come from having some photography knowledge, some knowledge about lighting composition, that sort of thing that kind of makes a picture a little better, and then knowing how to edit it, and to edit it while still maintaining the integrity of the
Mhm.
digital image, because I feel like one of the biggest things that I see people do is sort of over edit, right?
Yes.
And then they just sort of destroy the image. And it's an art form. It is, right? I think to edit to something that's beautiful and kind of not too crazy, you know?
Well, people's edits, that's what defines their style, right?
Yes. Hmm.
You
Yep.
know,
Exactly.
like I'm
Yeah.
sure you have a specific workflow for your wedding photography or your,
Yep.
your food photography that you do with your DSLR. So, I mean, that
Yep.
same kind of thing would kind of go over to your iPhone. I mean,
Absolutely.
I have a specific editing style that I do, and uh,
Yeah.
like I say, it takes a while for people to develop their style, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially with the iPhone because there's so many different things you can do with it. But
Yeah. I always tell people just because you can doesn't mean you should.
yes, that's right.
But I will say, I mean, I do love to play with my edits. I obviously I have my business page for my Instagram, but I also have my personal page, which is where I started with things. And I will definitely play and edit things in ways that I would never do, on the business side. But that's where the fun of it comes in, and I think that's a little bit of a way to kind of spark creativity and to kind of keep myself, thinking and looking, well, what do I want to do with this? How do I want to do this? And that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I usually talk to people about their creative process. So, but I think we
Hmm.
pretty much covered that because you
I think
talk
we
about
have.
Snapseed and
Hmm.
is there anything different than that you've explored, like besides Hipstamatic and Snapseed?
Those are really the two that I've settled into in terms of my process flow. Over the years, I've tried lots of different things, but I think those two really kind of at this point are really the ones that I use the most. And I don't, I used to use a lot of the Instagram filters early on, but because there
Yeah.
really wasn't a whole lot else out there. And it's interesting because every now and then I'll I'll post I'll go to post something on Instagram and there's all these filters and things, and I'll say, oh, you know what? That actually looks kind of nice like that. Maybe I'll use that.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, but I don't do that so much anymore. I really kind of once I'm done editing, it's the way I want it to look.
Yeah. And do you use iCloud for your photo storage, or like for your phone, or do you do it the
I do
old-fashioned
for my
way?
phone. I do.
Yeah.
I have. Well, yeah. The answer, I guess, is a little bit of both. Definitely, everything's in the iCloud, and then
Hmm.
every, not quite so regularly, I do back it up to an external device, an actual hard drive.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I work it too. I've always
They've made
I've
the
often
iCloud storage so easy.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've often thought maybe going back to the old way of doing it when I had my Canon, offload the pictures, put them in folders and all that stuff. But I found that's just um, it's just too hard to
It's
keep up,
it's
especially with a
cumbersome.
phone. Oh yeah,
It's
like especially with
cumbersome.
a phone because you tend to take a lot more pictures with your phone than you do, you know, when you had the big camera, right?
Oh
And that's
yeah.
all I use now is a phone. So,
Hmm.
but what I like is with iCloud is you can put it on it comes up on the Mac and it's on the even on my Apple TV I can go in there and look at pictures that I've taken hours before, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
it's really handy that way.
It is,
Um,
and really yeah, and I think, like a lot of things, once you kind of get a handle on the process flow and how it all actually connects, because it can be a little confusing and overwhelming. Virtual storage is still something that a lot of people sort of struggle with, like, like, where is it and how do I get to it, and where is it sitting, and once you kind of figure out how that all works and how it all connects with whatever devices you're using, it does make it much easier.
yes, and I have my photo library is on a external hard drive because my all I have for a Mac is a MacBook Pro and it's got a small hard drive. So I keep
Right.
everything on an external drive, but it's backed up to Backblaze. So I mean, I've got iCloud,
Yep.
I've got the external drive, and I've got Backblaze. So I've got three copies of it. So I mean, I'm good that way.
Yeah,
Um,
you're good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
yeah, that sounds about right.
yeah. So as a wedding photographer, that's where
Mhm.
your DSLR stuff has taken you. Where would you like? Do you have any aspirations for your iPhone stuff? Any place where you would like to see it go?
No, I I used to do a gallery show about once a year, and and it's been a couple of years since I've done one, and I would really love to. And the reason that I like doing shows, and when I say gallery shows, sometimes it was an eyeglass store. It has rotating artists through every month, and I would go put my stuff up on the walls in there. Or I was in group shows where there might be 10 or 12 of us, and we go take over a gallery. And what I loved about doing those with my DSLR photos was that it forced me to go through my personal library and really pull out images that I loved when I took them, and do something with them. And I would love to do the same thing with my iPhone photos, because, like
Yeah.
everyone else, I take so many of them, and I know there's really good stuff in there, and there's some stuff I really enjoy taking, and it's just sort of sitting there digitally and laughing at me, saying, "Here I am, do
Yeah.
something with me." So I think having a show, like having an iPhone or smartphone photography show, would be a lot of fun, and I'd love to do that with other people. It'd be great. It'd be a fun thing to do. So
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool. And
yeah,
that's the nice thing about living in a big city is you have a little more opportunity for things like that. I'm in a little, I would say it's a small city. It's only about 22,000 people,
hmm,
and it's about 2.5 hours northwest of Toronto. So it's kind of out of the way for me to try to, you know, get down there and get noticed and everything else. I mean, I almost have to move down there, and I'm certainly not going to do that because
sure,
I'm a small town guy, kind of a country
yeah,
guy, country boy. But uh, so that you've got some pretty good opportunities there. I'm sure there's plenty of museums in Chicago where you can
oh,
try
there's
to get
lots
your
of that
stuff
kind of
in, and
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so you're very fortunate that way. But
yeah.
someday the big chance might come up, and the door might open, and you'll have one heck of a good show.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think Um, there have been a few of us who have been knocking around the idea of the photo walks and doing more collaborations again. It's picking up some steam, and I think that's something that's kind of, when you do something like that where it's a little more organized. I don't want to say structured because it's not very structured, but organized, where there's
Yeah.
a few of you kind of working towards a similar thing, or at least going out and having a little fun doing it. then all of a sudden you've got a little more momentum behind it too. Now 3 people want to do it, or 6 people want to do it, and it starts to come together. So I think it'll happen sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, and I've been enjoying the artful iconography community as well. It's been a lot of fun to see everybody's photos. And today's theme was great. It was water, and it was a great theme today for the Throwback Thursday. I love seeing everyone's images.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes I struggle to think of a theme, but I'll sometimes just look through my camera roll, which is like, I don't know how many thousands are in it, but
yes, exactly.
I'll maybe just give the screen a flick, and then where it stops, I'll look at something and think, well, that might make a good theme.
I like that. That's a good way to do it.
yeah, So I always try to come up with something interesting and different. I don't want to be repetitive or anything. So, and just looking on Instagram, I find that so, what's the word I'm looking for?
Inspiring.
Not influential. Inspiring. Yes. Thank you.
Inspiring.
I find it so inspiring looking through my Instagram feed, because I follow a lot of DSLR photographers, but I also follow a lot of mobile photographers too, from all over the world. Yep. And the stuff that they put on there is just amazing. So,
it really is, yeah.
Well,
that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Angie, I'm so glad we had this conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up about anything, or?
No, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you inviting me to come on.
Yeah, and it was very last minute, so I do appreciate you taking the time, and I think we're a 1 hour difference between us, so it's getting late for both of us, but
yes, but later for
really
you.
Going anywhere.
Right, that's true. Time is taking on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, stay on the line after we close it off here, because I'm going to get some more information from you. But just tell people real quick where they can find you online.
Sure. My website is Angela Garbot. That's GARBOT.com. And my Instagram is Angela Garbot Photography. Cool.
Alrighty, yeah. I'll put those in the show notes, and so you. And
I should also say my personal Instagram is just Angela Garbot, and that's where more of my fun, my food stuff and just fun stuff is. So.
Oh yeah, right on. That's. I'll be looking for that one, because I think I found your other one with all the wedding stuff.
But, you did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alrighty, and you can find me at on Instagram at Macmillan Photo, on Twitter Macmillan_photo. And of course, at the Artful Eye Photography community. I'm also on Dayflash at Macmillan. And like I said, I've been looking at Mobitog, mobitog.com, and I'm just Macmillan there too. So it's good for not just iPhone photographers, but mobile photographers in general. So it's a really good community too. I'd like to give them some love. And,
that's fun. I'm going to have to go check that out.
Yeah, give it a look. They've got a lot of interesting themes and things going on too, like monthly contests. It was Kevin Barrett, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. He got me onto that community, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. So
awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Angie. I really appreciate it, and
Great.
We will see everyone next time.
Great. Thanks, Greg.